down some big names over the years, right?
If anybody had the right to write a book, well, it was your granddad, because he started the family.
Right. I mean, it was his namesake, right?
It was his baby, right?
Yep.
If it's his baby, he does what he wants with it, right?
Yep.
No, I was always intrigued by, how he, wrote the book. And then there was other books after this, right?
Yeah. And then my dad wrote, Bound by Honor. This was, his...
Bonanno.
Right. This was, his version, the story from his point of view, that one right there.
So now we got two perspectives. We got your grandpa and your father.
Correct.
Right. You think the books are similar? They had similar perspectives, or you think it was a difference in opinion?
They're different in that, my father was younger and had, perspective from a younger, person lower in the organization, where my grandfather's, story was, always told from his, perch, at the top, right? He recollects, when he worked for Maranzano, and the whole perspective is him as the leader, and he's talking, as a father, where my dad is, talks from like the inside, of here's how, everything went down, and my dad was very, good with names and dates, and not that Grandpa wasn't, but Grandpa was trying to tell a story, not talking down to people, but, trying to be.
He's giving it from an owner's perspective,
right?
Where your father's giving it as an employee.
That's a good analogy, exactly.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense, because, when you're an owner, you're thinking broad stroke, you're thinking big picture. When you're in the mix, you get involved in the details,
right,
of whatever you're doing. So your father was more the details.
And of course, I knew my father better, and when I read, and I've read through that, but I could hear his voice more than my grandfather's as well. But my dad's, what he's saying in there, and a lot of the stories that he tells, I remember some of them, right? So, just my own personal memories of my own views of what happened in those different stories that he tells, where my grandfather's stuff, that was in the 30s and 40s and 50s, were his heyday, and that's where most of his stories are. And I wasn't around for those, but the 60s and then the 70s, especially in the 80s and 90s, I was involved in part of it.
So everything is accurate and legit, and...
Well, yeah. I mean, they both felt that they were telling, but they were telling the story from their perspective, right? And somebody else could watch that same story and have a different take on it. But
see, what you said is true, because we could all watch. Let's say we got 10 different people. Well, let's just say you and I, right? We watch a movie, and then we want to talk about the movie after that. Well, there's going to be parts in it that stand out to me, and parts that stand out to you.
Absolutely.
We watch the same thing, but you got a different opinion. I have a different opinion, but it's the same movie.
Right.
So stuff that happened, but like you said, from two different points of view.
Right. And where my father's book, I felt, was just more of a news report accounting of things. My grandfather was, always trying to make a point, always trying to educate. So he was always trying to, make the story. He told the story with a point of, with a point, right? He wasn't just repeating something. He was teaching, right? He was educating. He was trying to, enlighten you. And my dad does that as well, but more of his stuff is, factual accounts of who was there and what happened, especially when my dad's, big part of his book is talking about things that happened in the commission, right? Actual meeting, meeting minutes, basically. And that had never happened. No one else has written books about, what happened in the commission meeting. So that's pretty powerful.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the book that came out after this book was The Last Testament?
Well, the one book came out, my dad got together with Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
And they put this novel together. And
so he did a book with him.
And if you look on the back, it's the two of them. And you would think, the guy.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's, Bill Bonanno and Donnie Brasco. And, at one time, of course, nobody would have thought they would ever.
That's your father.
The taller one, right?
Yeah.
The one that looks like the FBI agent, and the FBI agent looks like the, yeah.
No, son, you're right. They look the opposite.
They look the opposite, right? He's got his dark glasses on. He looks like he's the mafioso.
And then the next one came out.
And then my next one came out was after my father passed away. He wrote a book with Gary Abramowitz, and they released it after he passed. And
The Last Testament.
Yeah. And that one's a really good book about the inside workings of the commission, and that I really enjoyed that book.
Spin off from grandfather.
Right. And then there was the last one was my mom's book, Mafia Marriage. she had written a book. I think it was the late 80s, if I remember right. And it was just, the story from her, perspective. Yeah, there's been 4 or 5 other books, with the same story. But
So Mafia marriage, Rosalie
Bonanno. Yeah, that's my mother, Rosalie Perfacci.
God bless.
She's 90 years old next Tuesday and doing well. So, enjoying great grandchildren and great grandchildren and her children. And that's the book right there.
And then that book is the last one that was wrote?
This one in 2011 was the last one. Yeah.
And what's that one over there?
Which one?
Right in front of you.
Oh, so this one, now this is like the same book, but it's from a different publisher in England. So they changed the name. I don't really know the story why there was 2 different titles, but recently I just compared them. It's the same book, just different title, different publisher.
Really, this one,
I think that one's from England, that version right there.
This is somebody tried to copy it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that was a library book. Yeah, I was trying to find them on Amazon, and they show pictures like this picture, right? And I wanted a hardback copy, and that's what I thought I was buying. And then this is what they sent me. It's an old library book.
So total, we got 6 books.
Yeah.
I got a lot of homework to do.
Yeah.
I want to read every one of them.
Oh,
I read your grandfather's book years ago.
I can get you copies, some of them, yeah. But anyway, like I said, I have them all packed away somewhere, but it's finding them is going to be the hard part.
I want to keep our friends' privacy. We have a dear mutual friend, who brought us together. I tell you, we got a nice crew here in Arizona. That's between here and Tucson and all different parts of Arizona.
Yeah, I like these lunches. It's not something I would normally do, but you invited me,
guys.
And I've had just feels real comfortable, hanging out, and it's fun, and
good camaraderie,
good laughs, and you learn something, right? Some smart dudes at that table.
Yeah. Every week we get together like once or twice a week, right? Some guys can make it on one day, some guys can't make it on another day. That's why we have 2 days a week available, and we'll sit down. There may be 6 to 10 of us, and sit down and have a nice lunch.
Yeah.
And laugh.
Enjoying it, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah. So. And then our dear friend is a great guy. Him too. A lot of history.
Oh yeah.
A lot of deep history and stuff. Like I said, I'm going to keep his privacy. When the time is right, maybe he'll come on. I'd love to have him. So then, Tucson. How long did you stay in Tucson?
Well, I went to college in Tucson. I first started in San Diego State, and then I transferred.
What do they call that? That's not NAU?
No, University of Arizona. U of A. So, or they tried to change it to U Arizona, but it didn't stick. So it's U of A. It's always been U of A. It always will be U of A. Anyway, so I went to college there, and then I lived there a few years after. But since the 60s, my parents, they would take me and my brothers and sisters and drop us off in Tucson, with grandma and grandpa, and we would be in Tucson, from the 60s on. So I always have feel part Tucsonian because I've been there, going so long.
They're fast over here, right?
Yeah, he's got that.
As soon as you say something, they pop it up.
Yeah, he's got that up there.
So then from there you went to the Bay Area.
Originally, I was born here. Then we moved to Brooklyn, and I actually lived in Long Island for years.
What part of Brooklyn?
Well, I lived with my grandmother on Bay 10th Street.
I used to live on Bay 13th.
Oh,
well, I mean, not lived there, but I had a girl there.
So, but then we moved. We were living in East Meadow, in Long Island, and I remember the day that we were, things were happening in the, the banana wars and everything, and we, had to get out of town. And my dad, said, "Mom, where do you want to go?" Because Mom wanted out. And back then we had paper maps, and she laid it out on the table, and she ran her finger from Brooklyn all the way as far as she could go, and it stopped in San Jose. And she goes, "Great, we got your cousin works," because Del Monte was tomato. It wasn't Silicon Valley then. It was just all tomatoes and orchards. And so Del Monte had a canning plant there, and so did Campbell's. In fact, there's a little town called Campbell, and that's where we got our house. But that's how we moved. And then my mom had a sister that lived out there in Modesto, which is very close to San Jose. So we moved to San Jose, and I remember driving out we were, leaving East Meadow in the middle of the night trying to duck out, basically. And my dad's, we had a station wagon. They loaded us up, and we were driving to California. And us kids, and back then,
the panel station wagon.
Yeah, it really was. And we were rolled down the windows, and back then you had the the Cranks, and we were singing California, here we come, and Dad's like, stop, you know.
It's part of the gold rush. Huh?
Yeah. So, and then we moved to, drove cross country and moved to California, got there in 68 and was there until the 80s.
So just to wind it back a little bit, the wedding, the famous till today,
my parents'
biggest,
wedding. Yeah.
The biggest mob wedding ever in the history of, they would say, organized crime.
I mean, there were Congress people, there were all the heads of state from what my dad called our world. They were all there, and there were also dignitaries from the United States government. And the FBI, recording license plate. It was a lot of the scenes from The Godfather were, the wedding scenes were based on my parents' wedding, because Puzo lived, nearby, and he was aware of them when he was growing up. So yeah, Don Corleone and the Corleones were a amalgamation of all these, but like Michael Corleone was basically my father. It was who he was modeled after.
Right.
And
I heard something like that a lot of they depicted it, a lot of parts of that movie was about your grandfather.
Right, because Puzo, he was a fan. He admired my grandfather, and I'm not saying that Don Corleone was my grandfather. That's who the fictional character was based a lot on my grandfather.
And they said there was about 3,000 people at the wedding.
Yeah.
And the Waldorf, right?
It was at the Astor. The Waldorf wasn't big enough, so they went to they had to move it. Yeah.
I mean, I remember hearing about that wedding. The list of people, the names. Yeah. It was
incredible. Yeah, and there's the cake. That famous 7-layer. Cake, and I have some footage of it. We should take a look at it sometimes. And there's probably technology now where you could probably do some facial recognition and see all the names of the people that were actually at that. And I know somebody in the family has that wedding list, and I want to get a hold of it, but I haven't been able to nail it down.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine the names on that list. And that was back in 1956. 56. Wow.
August of 56.
When did you realize you were part of this family? I mean, you knew who your mom and dad was.
Well, yeah, but you don't
knowing who your grandfather was, and
when you're growing up inside of it, that's your normal. There's nothing exceptional about it, right?
Exactly.
It wasn't until I had a few things when I was younger, but it wasn't until like high school days where, when I went to high school and people would say, hey, do you know, they would tell their friends, hey, this guy is, son of, Bill Bonanno, his grandfather was in the mafia and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, what? And what's the big deal, right? And then the more people that, commented and the way they react, then you're like, wait a minute, this is a little different, and that's when I really started to.
Well, people started treating you different.
Right. And then, I would have, remember trying to, date a girl, and then her dad found out, what my last name was and wouldn't let her go out with me. And, I was shocked. I was like, why? And then, but you start figuring it out, and then you realize that you're, prejudged, right? People they're prejudicing you. They've decided who you are and what you're all about before they even know you. And then even if you try to tell them the truth, you can't convince them of anything other than what they already believe.
It's like an uphill battle.
You can't even. It was, I've even had friends that I've, for years, and they're like, "Well, what does it feel like to have like Kennedy money?" It's like, I don't got Kennedy money. Are you kidding? Do you think I would be going to work every day as a project manager if we had Kennedy money? But they think, Grandpa's house had just the walls were like in that show Ozark, just had cash in the walls everywhere. It's like, yeah, I wish, but that's not reality.
I tell you, people believe what they want to believe.
But they will not. You can't talk them out of it either. That's the thing. It's like, no, dude, I was there. That is not the way it was.
Right.
But you did. Like, no, we didn't.
They're convinced. Like,
right.
And you explain yourself. It's like you're trying to you look worse because now he's trying to hide it.
Right, right, exactly.
So you just let them talk and just sit there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I mean, look, here's the thing. I mean, your grandfather, he was an intimidating guy.
He was very intimidating.
I can imagine his presence.
He had just a presence and he, with no messing around, and just everybody fell in line. I mean, even some of the, big guys and name, macho dudes, right, that were all badass, and they would kowtow to Grandpa, and, because he just had that presence and that intensity.
So everybody was a gangster until the real gangster walked in the room. Yeah. What was it like?
That's
like
exactly
when he walked,
right.
Like when he walked into a room,
I mean, he had that charisma. It just stopped. Everybody noticed when he walked into the room. And when he left the room, there was like, because everybody seemed to be on their, best behavior as soon as he walked into the room, because that's the way he was. He was always elegant. He was always polite. He never raised his voice. He was always calm and just had this, it was an aura, a presence when he walked into the room, and everybody in the place knew it. Even if they didn't know who he was, they know he was somebody just, by the way he
But it's a guy you wanted to be around. You wanted to have that magnetic.
Absolutely.
I would think.
Right. A lot of,
But, he goes back to Al Capone. He goes back to Luciano. He goes back
he had
to
personal relationships with those guys. I mean, business relationship, personal relationships. He liked Capone. He said he was a jovial guy, and he liked the way he dressed. So.
I tell you, we'll mention it again, but that 60-minute interview with Mike Wallace,
where he said that, that was classic.
Yeah, we gotta go over that together. You and I,
again.
We'll play it for everybody out there, and you chime in, and because there's things that you see that and know that they can't tell just watching TV.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to have a personal relationship. You ever meet anybody from the other families like Luciano, Capone? Like, you ever had you around them as a kid?
No, but at one point in high school, my oldest son Vincent went to high school at Corona del Sol, and he was a pretty good football player. He was a starter, and got his name announced all the time. Vince Bonanno doing this. But the funny thing was, on the cheerleading squad was Gambino's granddaughter, and they hung out with each other. They were friends. They weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but they had
innocent kids.
The same group of friends. Right? Who would have thought that the grandchildren of these two Dons, the great grandchildren actually.
The great,
it was because it was my son. So,
like Lucky Luciano.
No, I never personally met, those guys were older. I never met those, but, my grandfather, they worked out, they started the commission because, my grandfather wanted, knew that what was most important to what he calls the Americanized mafia was money, making money, right? And they can make a lot more money in peaceful times than in war times. And for 30 years, they call my grandfather's book, he calls it Pax Bonanno, P-A-X, meaning peace in Latin, lasted 30 something years. And those, it was the mafia from the 30s to the 60s was everything, right? They were.
I tell you, he was a boss at like 20, how old was he?
26.
He was like 26 years old. He was a boss already. I mean, to come up with the idea, because he was part of the idea. Right. Of the commission and the five families.
He talks about that in his book about his meeting with Luciano and how it went down. And that's in a nutshell. It was like, we can make money if we get along. So let's form this commission and we can, air out our grievances, handle everything, and just keep making money. And that's what they did for years and years.
But he was like a rancher too. Like he loved the ranch, right?
Oh yeah, he loved coming out. He had a ranch in Red Rock, Arizona, which is just north of
Red
Tucson.
Rock's beautiful, yeah.
Right. So he was into cheese. They had dairy farms up in Wisconsin and Fond du Lac, the Grande Cheese Company. He was part owner of. And then you've heard the whole Pizza Connection stuff and the whole industry back back east. And the state of Pennsylvania did a report that's out on the internet that's it's pretty detailed about how they had the cheese market and the pizza business, and that was good stuff. It was all legit. That was legit business, but yeah.
I tell you what, no matter who takes over a family, right? I know, like when I was inducted back in '91, I wasn't told you are now part of the Lucchese family. I was told you're in the Vicamuso family. But as far as law enforcement goes, it'll always be the Lucchese family. Even when we introduce each other as members, they don't say so-and-so's with the Bonanno, so-and-so's with the Lucchese. You get introduced by who's at the top at that time. That's a name that'll never go away, Bonanno.
No, yeah.
It'll always, 100 years later, it'll always be there.
It is, yeah. I mean, even recently, they had that NBA thing, and the Bonanno name was mentioned in there. And this goes back to what I'm telling you about. People I've known my whole life, right? They know I wasn't involved in that at all, in that world. Yet this thing comes out, and ESPN says, it was mob related, and the Bonannos were fixing games. They're like pissed at me for not tipping them off, my buddies, and like. And they do not believe that I had no clue. I have no association with those guys anymore, right? But these people think I do.
Just because you got the name.
Because I got the name. So they think I had all this inside information that I wasn't sharing. And I'm like, you fucking idiots.
There's a saying, we got the name and everybody else plays the game.
You fuck around and playing with the wrong pistol. My shit got a broken safety. Flow sumo, this ain't a game, Uno. Shout out to my Usos, killing bills like Uma. Balls travel from Pluto, big truck soprano, gabagool and prosciutto, kicking ill like judo, judge and jury like Judy. Hoes think they knew me, flows flow through me. Nike gray hoodie, contemplating money. Bees swarming like honey, watch your little homie filter through the phone.